Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the news that Rishi Sunak is giving serious thought to pulling the UK out of the purview of the European Court of Human Rights, which would of course mean pulling us out of the Council of Europe, meaning even more international isolation. But as the idea is completely insane, even by the standards of recent Tory policies, what is Sunak really trying to achieve? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, the so-called Conservative Party has spent the last few years destroying the only good that they've ever done in modern times, possibly in their entire history. The Conservatives pushed for the establishment of the European Court of Human Rights, as well as, of course, the European Convention on Human Rights that it adjudicates on. They pushed for us to join the European community. They pushed for the establishment of the European-wide single market, which created the EU. And after being taken hostage by their extreme wing, they've now pulled us out of two of their three noble contributions to British society. And that same extreme wing wants to pull us from the third as well. You know, they're disguising it as stopping the court from enforcing human rights for asylum seekers or illegal immigrants, as they call them. Of course, they're not illegal immigrants. I mean, some are. We're able to deport those without any hassle at all. The European Court of Human Rights has never once prevented or even delayed the deportation of someone entering the UK illegally. Not what they do. But the swivel-eyed loons use the asylum issue as a smokescreen to get the support of unwary voters. In reality, they don't care about asylum seekers. They don't even care about the much smaller number of people actually trying to illegally enter the country. After all, they can put them to work, make more money out of them. No, this is about taking away the human rights of the vast majority of the population, the very people they're trying to persuade to vote for them. They're attempting to abolish thousands of regulations behind another smokescreen, of course, because they never push any policy transparently. You know, they claim that these EU regulations should be destroyed for no other reason than the EU regulations. These regulations include our right to paid annual leave, sick pay, the right to demand a replacement or refund if something we buy isn't working, you know, the right to not be sold food that's unsafe for consumption, that sort of thing. Thousands of regulations which all protect us. And how do I know that they're all rules that the public wouldn't want to lose? Because the Tories pushing this bill have not rallied their campaign around any examples of ones that we would agree with dropping. Because you would think that it would be much easier to persuade us that it's a good idea by giving a few little examples of the sorts of regulations that are not at all in our interests. But all that they can argue is, well, they're EU regulations, so they should be abolished, with some vague notion of it somehow boosting the economy, is because they've not been able to identify a single one that the general public would want the government to abolish, much less thousands of them at once. And the push to take us out of the European Court of Human Rights is all part of this. It's a way of preventing the courts defending our rights. It's relatively easy for them to stop British courts defending our rights as long as they can get the rest of the Tory MPs to go along with it, because they just change the law. If you change the law, then inevitably you change the way the court has to respond to that law, because that's all courts do. They just decide on matters of law. But they cannot unilaterally change international law. So they go with the next best option, which is to withdraw from our international treaties in order to in order to just ignore those international courts. The damage this will do to our international reputation cannot be overstated. But of course, these ghouls don't care about that. The reason they're always stood with a union flag behind them is because they've been wiping their arse with it. But now Rishi Sunak is reported to be seriously considering what has been, until now, a crackpot scheme pushed by the extreme wing of the party. Mind you, so was Brexit at one time. But why is Sunak doing it? Well, actually, the answer to that one, it's first worth asking if he can even do it. In all probability, no, not a chance. He's no mandate for it. It wasn't a manifesto promise. I doubt the Tories want to hold a referendum on the matter. In fact, actually, most Tory MPs don't even seem to want to go ahead with it at all. It would represent a huge constitutional change to the UK. The House of Lords, apart from anything else, would surely be difficult. In fact, it's hard to imagine many Tory MPs voting for it unless they thought the Lords would block it. And again, they fell for the usual trap that they've been falling for like 6 or 7 years now. Oh, well, it's, you know, to keep the party together. All right, we'll support it. If Sunak pursues this policy, it is likely that it would have to be in the form of a manifesto promise for the next election, with the intention of pulling us out of the Council of Europe if he wins. And that is likely why Sunak is sort of pretending to consider it. I don't think he's serious. It's quite clear right now Sunak is under immense pressure. He is not giving his party any confidence that he has a plan to win the next election. I keep hearing that some of his allies think he's charting this narrow path to a possible win. He's not. But I will explain that in more detail this week if I get time. Most Tories think they're going to lose the next election. It is just a case of how badly, and is there a way to change course again? Some Tories think a Boris Johnson return would change their fortunes. I don't think anyone credibly thinks Truss would take over again, at least not this side of the election. But some do think that Sunak should take her economic policies seriously. Yeah, the same ones that consigned her to the shortest prime ministerial term in UK history, and by some margin, and the previous owner of that dubious honour died in office. At the weekend, the Telegraph were reporting that the 1922 committee of backbench Tory MPs could change the party rules to allow for a confidence vote in Sunak's leadership if the elections go really badly. In reality, this isn't actually news. We've seen this play out a few times now. The normal party rules that a leader cannot face a confidence vote in the first 12 months of their leadership or for 12 months after winning a confidence vote. But if a clear majority of Tory MPs seem to want to remove the leader, the 1922 committee will just change the rules to allow an earlier vote. They have threatened to change the rules in order to force the resignations of their past 3 leaders and prime ministers. So of course they will for Sunak as well. Theresa May, she had won a confidence vote. She was immune, but they told her they were going to change the rules if you don't resign tomorrow. She resigned the next day. Boris Johnson had won a confidence vote, but they went to him and says, we're going to change the rules if you don't resign tomorrow. He resigned the next day. Liz Truss had only just been made Prime Minister. She was immune for a full year as well. But they went to her and said, we're going to change the rules if you don't resign tomorrow. She resigned the next day. Can you imagine? If this happens with Sunak as well, it would mean that 4 consecutive Tory leaders and Prime Ministers have been forced from office within the space of a few years, within the space of like 4 years, as a result of being threatened with a confidence vote that under normal circumstances they'd be immune from. I can think of no better indication of just how badly the Tories have damaged themselves, never mind everything else, over Brexit than to highlight just how unstable their leaderships have been since. If Sunak is brought down after the local elections, it will have been 4 leaders brought down by the same circumstances in 4 years. But if a majority of Tory MPs would rather stick with Sunak than allow either Truss or Johnson back, then the rules will not be changed. And there's not credibly anyone else to try and bring in if Sunak is brought down. But Sunak may not be completely confident that a majority of his MPs will continue to back him, even if the local elections go as badly, which would be very badly indeed. So this report about the Prime Minister seriously considering pushing for exit from the Court of Human Rights may just be another example of the sort of thing Boris Johnson used to do when he was in trouble. Agree to the more insane ideas that the ERG had in return for their continued support, because the Conservatives don't seem to be electing any leaders with backbones these days. The way it would work is the ERG would just wait for the Prime Minister to become weakened and then go, oh, we seem to be supporting you. Well, we're not terribly convinced that you're representing our best interests. Now, there's this policy we really like. And, if you were to back this policy, we can see our way clear to supporting you. And if Sunak feels he needs to adopt this policy in return for that support, he may think that there might be a way to chart it through. I mean, imagine trying to get such a bill through Parliament. Let's say that Tory MPs back it. This sounds stunningly unlikely from what I'm reading, but let's say they complain, but they've complained about no end of other terrible bills and still back them anyway. They're held hostage to the ERG as much as whoever happens to be pretending to lead them this month. So then it goes to the House of Lords. And the House of Lords comes back and says, sorry, Prime Minister, I can't seem to find where you promised to do this in your manifesto. Oh, we didn't, Sunak will say. In fact, we explicitly promised to champion human rights on the international stage. The Lords will say. So your proposal is to break another manifesto promise. I see. In that case, I'm also struggling to see the bit where you say all this is subject to a referendum. Oh, we don't want a referendum. Why not? I'm not really convinced we're going to win, if I'm honest. I see. Well, it's a no from us then. Massive constitutional change for which you have no mandate. It would make us an international pariah. It serves no practical use for the country. It's just red meat for your more unhinged MPs, and we're not going to go along with it. Then he's left putting it into the manifesto, just like Cameron did with the Brexit referendum, with the expectation that he won't have the power to implement it after the election. So that's that sorted. Only, of course, it went badly wrong for Cameron when the silly beggar won the election. I suspect it's safe enough for the Tories. If they make leaving a court which defends our human rights a main manifesto promise, I don't think there's very much chance of a reversal of their polling fortunes. That being said, this really is something that could easily be blocked before ever getting to the Lords. You know, I'm not seeing reports at all that suggest that Tory MPs will just bend over for this latest nonsense, in which case Sunak risks a rebellion in even trying to get it through the Commons. In fact, I've seen a couple of reports which suggest that Tory MPs are insistent this will not get through the Commons. And whether it's possible for Sunak to hang on for a summer or autumn 2024 election, I don't know. What I do know is that he cannot invite a defeat in Parliament. If he is defeated, I mean, he's already U-turned a few times to avoid defeat. If he allows himself to be defeated in the House of Commons, that would be a huge problem for him. I mean, more solid prime ministers will get the odd defeat. Even that's stupid. They shouldn't allow it. You know, they should U-turn absolutely rather than be defeated. But occasionally it happens. But an otherwise secure prime minister, it's embarrassing, they move on. But someone whose position is already fairly unstable cannot be inviting a defeat, because inevitably then the papers, the whole media will be full of, oh, is this the beginning of the end for Rishi Sunak then? You know, and I wonder if the ERG will understand that this policy will be impossible for any leader to achieve. But then it is part of their Brexit vision. They cannot get what they want just from exiting the EU. You know, it's the human rights laws that are their main problem. You know, this could get very, very spicy indeed. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.